So for the second consecutive season, the San Antonio Spurs have just missed the NBA postseason. And obviously this is a very un-Spurs things to do, since we know they're a top 5 franchise in the league with their accomplishments. But as of late, things haven't been amazing. But this upcoming offseason could be a big one for the Spurs, and it could decide how good their future will be. So in today's video, I'll be naming 4 things that I think the San Antonio Spurs should do this offseason. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on the video, as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want more NBA content like this, and tell me my goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'm really close. And comment on the video, start a conversation with me, as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro. The first thing I think the San Antonio Spurs should do is something that a lot of Spurs fans might disagree with, but in my opinion, they should let DeRozan walk in this year's free agency. And you might be wondering, why would they let him go? DeRozan's an all-star and he played amazing this season, and all of that is true, but on this team, DeRozan is their best player, and in my opinion, a team led by DeRozan won't be going far. And I know they were the 7th or 6th seed before, and then they struggled with injuries, but nonetheless, the Spurs were probably going to lose in the first round this year no matter what. So I think they should just let DeRozan walk in free agency. I think it would really help a lot of their young players, since a lot of more shots would go to them. Not saying DeRozan's a ball hog, he's obviously not. He averaged 7 assists, but the shots that he takes could go to guys like DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker, Devin Vassell, and others, which I think in the long run will help them reach their full potential better, rather than DeRozan being on the team. Also, this free agency, DeRozan's going to be asking for quite a bit of money, since he did play amazing, and I think they should use that money elsewhere, or just keep it in general, because having extra cap space is never a bad idea. The second thing I think the San Antonio Spurs need to do this offseason is something that I think they will do, and it is to rebuild around all of their young players, because the Spurs are a team that is filled with a bunch of players with young talent, as they have many players who could be fringe all-stars or solid starters. As we know, they have DeJounte Murray, who made an underratedly jump this season, as he averaged 15 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists, shooting 45% from the field. It's crazy how no one's talking about how great he played this year. I think he could be a top 10 point guard in the league in his prime, and he kind of reminds me of a better version of Lonzo Ball. All the hype Lonzo gets, DeJounte should get it more, in my opinion. The Spurs also have Keldon Johnson, who was a player that I think will be a future star in the NBA, and I think he has the potential to be a superstar, but I don't want to jump the gate too quick and say he'll be a superstar, but I do think that he's a player who has the potential to be one, because the Keldon Johnson's a great player who plays extremely hard, which leads to him grabbing a lot of rebounds, as he's one of the best rebounding guards in the entire NBA. He also has a very solid handle. He's not Kyrie Irving, but he can handle the ball without losing it, and he has a great ability to drive to the rim. He's also a pretty solid defender with his strength and quickness, and he took a huge leap this season, because last year he didn't really play that much, but now this season he jumped up to averaging 13 points, 6 rebounds, shooting 47% from the field and 33% from 3. You also remember that he is only 21 years old. So in my opinion, he has plenty of room to grow as a player and become a star. The way he plays just reminds me of a player who could be a star, and he seems like a player who works hard, so I think he'll improve his jump shot and handle significantly, and I think he has a making of a future star. And if he could be a future star for the Spurs, it would drastically change their franchise's success trajectory. The Spurs also have a guy in Lonnie Walker, who was pretty good this year in the minutes he played, as he averaged 11 points, shooting 35% from 3. He was kind of inconsistent player, and I don't really see him being a star player if I'm being honest, but I do think he will be a player who could be a solid starter, or a player who could be a 6-man type of scorer off the bench, and that's always valuable to have. And with their draft pick last year, they drafted Devin Vassell, who isn't really a player who I think could be a star, but I think he has all the intangibles to be a player who's a great 3-and-D player, as he's showed like the ability to be a solid defender and guard the perimeter at a good level, as well as shoot the 3 ball at a good level, because in his rookie year he averaged 5 points and shot 34% from 3 on 2 attempts. That's far from amazing, but if you watch the games, he had many moments where it looked like he could be a legitimate NBA player. They also have Derek White, who is a guy who averaged 15 points for them, and he is a bit older, but I still think he could fit in well with this team's timeline. So we can't sit here and act like the Spurs have a terrible court. We simply simply can't. And I honestly think this core is good enough to the point where if you decided to build around it, I actually think it could be solid. And I actually think that's what the Spurs should, and I believe that's what they will do. The third thing I think the San Antonio Spurs need to do is sign some three-point shooters. Because when you look at this roster, it's filled with a bunch of below average shooters and only a few above average ones. Since they have guys like Lonnie Walker, Rudy Gay, and Patty Mills, who is a free agent this season, and then the rest of the team is filled with a bunch of guys who I would say are below average shooters. And in today's NBA, you need more shooting than that. I think that's a big reason why the Spurs rank 21st in offensive rating. They need more shooting. In this offseason, there's plenty of guys who can shoot the ball that are available. And guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Tony Snell, JJ Redick is going to be available, Otto Porter Jr. is going to be available, Elvin Fournier is going to be available, Danny Green is going to be available, Otto Porter Jr. is going to be available. Oops, I already said that. And Doug McDermott is going to be available for a lot of other shooters. So there's not really much of an excuse for the Spurs not to get some more three-point shooting. And I think it could take their offense to the next level. Because if they have Greg Popovich coaching this team, he could definitely make some schemes and plays to get shooters open. And it'll just create more plays for guys like DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, and Keldon Johnson to drive to the rim, which is what they're absolutely best at. The fourth and final thing the San Antonio Spurs need to do this offseason is get some defenders. And you would have thought that the Spurs would be a good defensive team, since it seems like they always have been excellent on the defensive side of the floor. This year, they were actually a below average defensive team, as they ranked 17th in the league on defense. If the Spurs want to be good, they'll need to improve on that, because even if they add a bunch of shooters, without a superstar or like a legitimate all-star, they're not going to be amazing on offense. And the shooters that they sign are likely not going to be amazing defenders. So I think they need to sign some guys who can defend the ball well. And in my opinion, they should look into guys like Avery Bradley, Alfred Payton, Stanley Johnson, Reggie Bullock, and there's a bunch of other defenders in this year's free agency. And all those guys that I named would probably cost less than $7 million a year. So in my opinion, there's not much of an excuse for the Spurs to not get any of like those guys or someone else who could just defend at a good level. So I think if they could just add 2 or 3 more good veteran defenders, it could actually help this team a lot on the defensive side of the floor. Because as we know, the Spurs aren't a team that usually makes humongous moves in the offseason. If they actually want to compete next year in the postseason, they need to make some humongous moves. But to conclude the video, I actually believe the Spurs have one of the underrated bright futures in the NBA right now. I think if they made all of these moves, it would really help them out to make the playoffs next season. And I'm a pretty small fan of them since they have DeRozan. But I want DeRozan to leave so he can go and compete for a championship. Because no matter what the Spurs do this offseason, they're not going to be championship contenders. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Who do you think the Spurs should sign this offseason? Before you get out the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video, as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content, and to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. I'm really close. And comment on this video to start a conversation with me, as I do respond to all of my comments. And play that intro.